Hola, back with another one. My name is Emilia Rose, aka the spiritual therapist, here on YouTube. Today we will be talking about other issues. We as a society, especially within the Black community, always want to talk about daddy issues and how it affects our Black men, or how daddy issues affect women. But no one speaks about deadbeat mothers or mothers who were not there for their children, for whatever the case may be, whether it be addiction, whatever the reason is. I'm going to talk about my experience because this is something that I bring up all the time, but I never really went into depth about my mother issues. My mother came to this country at the age of 18 from the Dominican Republic. She met my dad. Who knows what happened? They got married. They had my older brother, then they had me. I used to really sit here and think, why did she have us? She could have just, I don't know what the basis of the relationship was. If she just used my dad to get into this country, I don't know, because her dad, my grandfather, came to this country quite often because of his job, whatever his job was. I know he was a reporter at one point. Whatever other job he worked at, he would go to New York quite often. So I don't understand why she couldn't just come to the country that way. From readings that I have gotten, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Sis didn't want me. I'm cool with that. I don't care, because at the end of the day, I'm here. And the way that my experience was with my mother in comparison to with my dad is quite interesting. With my mother, till this day, I'm about to reach my 30s soon, and to this day I still don't feel a closeness with her. It's more so kind of like a distant sibling or a cousin that your parents kind of forced you to be friends with, and you just holla at her every now and then. So it was like I was living with her, but she wasn't really the one who raised me. Her mother raised me, my grandmother. Love my grandmother to death. She's one of my favorite people on earth. She showed me the love of a mother and what that was supposed to be like. Whenever my mother had me young. She had me at 20 going on 21. She was still going to college and working at the same time, working on her degrees. So whenever she did come home, it was more so oh, mommy's home, let me tell you about my day. But she had such a long day or a stressful day, she didn't really want to hear it. Or she was half listening to me, but I could tell that she wasn't listening to me, so I would just stop talking, kind of thing. And it affected my older brother. I don't know what his relationship with my mother is like. I can only speak on my relationship with my mother. However, the relationship that he had with her, she has kicked us both out of her house when we were both 13. I don't know what's with that number. But with me, it's just been nothing but trauma. So I could only imagine that it affected him the same way. He just kind of went about it a different way. I found spirituality thanks to my grandmother and my dad, and he decided to go another way. When it comes to my childhood, my dad was there. He was active. He paid for all of our groceries. He paid for our school supplies, our school clothes. We had cell phones so that we can talk to him whenever we wanted to. He would pay for that. We had bank accounts that were linked to his bank account, so whenever we needed money, we could just get it straight from the ATM card. And we spent the weekends with him, the summers with him. No, we didn't spend the summers with him. We spent the summers in DR. The weekends we spent with him. Sometimes during the week, we would spend some days with him as well. He was a very active father. Now, my mother, not so much. It was kind of like I knew she was my mom, but my grandma was my mom. So it's kind of like there was never an emotional connection. Now, as an adult who has healed a lot of this trauma and who has spoken to her mother and to my father, and as a person with 2 degrees in psychology, I understand why she was like that with me. Kind of ish, not really, because to this day she still treats her 2 sons very differently than how she treats me. However, it was more so like growing up, she had to stop going to school because she had to help out with the household. Her father was a lot older, so she had to like help out. They weren't like the richest growing up in DR, so my grandma was like working, but my mom had to work as well. She was like a waitress at a restaurant, and maybe other things too. I don't know, like maybe she sold fruit or stuff. I don't know. But I do know for sure that she had to stop going to school and work while her brothers were able to kind of party. I feel like that has a little bit to do with it. Also, the fact that she didn't want me has to do with it too. Now, that's my experience with my mother. I'm gonna stop there. My experience with my father, the complete opposite. My dad, to this day, extremely overbearing, extremely overprotective, extremely overly sensitive, always wanting to be emotionally involved and physically involved in everything and anything that me and my brother do. It's so interesting because this, due to his trauma with his father and never having met him, and the way that he treated his older children, my siblings, he feels as though like this is kind of like his way of repenting in a way. I don't know. That's how I translate that. This has affected my life drastically. To this day, it's something I still struggle with because I never knew boundaries. I didn't know what the fuck it was. Imagine getting kicked out of your mother's house at the age of 13 and then bouncing from couch to couch, homeless, because you don't know where to go, in middle school in 8th grade. Your father calls you and tells you to just live with him. So you go to another state to go live there. And then you finish 8th grade, but you had to keep taking the train to go back and forth between Jersey and New York. And then eventually having to start high school in this neighborhood where you don't know anybody. Your mother just kicked you out. That alone was kind of like I struggled. Especially because the culture in New York is very different than New Jersey. We are very tough. Down to the way that I spoke, People were like, why are you so aggressive? I had to change a lot about myself in order to fit in to high school. It's bad enough that you have to fit in growing up in that neighborhood. Imagine that you're not even from that state and the culture is completely different. You're accustomed to just going out, being able to do a whole bunch of stuff, and you go to this country ass state where there's nothing to do but go to the mall, and you have to take buses to go everywhere because there isn't a train system where you could just go right to 42nd Street, hang out a little bit, go to McDonald's, do absolutely nothing. But it's so cool because it's a whole city. And just the adjustment was just, it was quite an experience. On top of that, you have an overbearing parent when you're used to a parent who doesn't care at all about you, or doesn't even pay you any attention, but just kind of makes sure that you take a shower, brush your teeth, and is fed. It consistently downplays you, consistently is never satisfied with anything that you do, consistently talks bad about you, to you, abusive not only emotionally but physically as well. And then you move to a household where the parent is over loving, over understanding, sits down and has conversations with you, and just very needy emotionally. Now as an adult, I understand that he was very needy. To this day, he kind of looks to me for emotional fulfillment, especially when he's going through hard times. And I've learned to say no and be like, I have my own shit. I'm a grown-ass woman. I have my own problems that I have to deal with, and I cannot be there for you emotionally because I could barely be there emotionally for myself. When I went into college was like, I went to college straight after graduating. We graduated in May 2012. I went to college July 2012. I took a couple summer courses just to kind of get my prereqs out of the way. The month that I graduated, which was May 2015, I moved out on my own because of the issues I had with my brother, the verbal abuse from him, just because he never went to therapy. I've been in therapy since I was 5. He did a little bit of therapy around that age. He's about 2.5 years older than me, so like around the age of 7. I continued to go to therapy, especially in high school, because of my anxiety and depression, especially moving into this state that's a lot slower than New York, and I'm used to everything being fast-paced. I had all of this anxiety, like, okay, like, where's the bus? Why is the bus not here? And then a lot of unhealed trauma. Right after high school, I was in a 4-year relationship, extremely toxic as fuck. I was literally dating my mother. And it was like he was in my life, but not really. He would call me whenever he felt like it. He would come around whenever he felt like it. But it was very much like love bombing. Like, he would just shower me with all of this attention, and he would kind of just be in my ear about how much he loved me and cared about me. I noticed this was not healthy at all. I learned to love myself. It was about 3 years of just dating myself, you know, messing around with people here and there, but like nothing serious, just learning how to love myself, learning what my boundaries are. I did not have boundaries with this person. I didn't know what boundaries were. I didn't know what boundaries looked like, because I always felt as though being in a relationship, I had to give my all to this person or they wouldn't love me. Similar to how I treated my relationship with my mother. Up until, I want to say 2-3 years ago, I've always had this mentality where it was like I always just had to do so much to prove myself or prove my worth of love to this person. When really it's like, no, it's supposed to be the opposite. Okay, she is my mother. She's supposed to look for me. She's supposed to be actively seeking me. She is supposed to be concerned about me. It's not supposed to be the other way around. Now, in an equal, healthy relationship, then yes, both parties, the child and the parent, will look for each other and be concerned for each other. However, that child doesn't owe you anything. If you haven't spoken in months as a parent, do you not care that you haven't spoken to your child in months? Your child could be dead. You haven't spoken to your child today. Do you not care? Your child could be dead. You haven't spoken to your child all week. Now, if your child is telling you, okay, well, I'm going through something, I really don't want to talk to anybody, I'll call you when I'm good, and I'll explain to you what happened, that's different. Through my healing experience, I noticed that I had no sense of boundaries. I did not know what the word no meant. Especially even with my father. The start of me saying no to him was like the gates have opened to a whole new path in my life. I learned that it's okay to say no. If I don't want to really do something, I don't have to please somebody if I don't want to. I don't have to do whatever somebody says just because I want to prove to them that I love them. It just, so many things clicked. It's so interesting that it hasn't been until like my mid-20s that I discovered women who have gone through the same thing that I have with my mother. I always just thought that it was me, because no one speaks about women and the trauma they go through with their mothers. It's always the trauma people go through with their fathers, but I've never had that experience. Like the type of trauma I experienced with my father, I wouldn't even call it trauma. It's more so just, maybe it's because I'm comparing it to the trauma with my mother, but that was an easy fix because of the fact that I had so much shit that I had to unlearn, that it all trickled down to my relationship with my dad and how it was. I literally just had to learn how to say no when it came to my dad, and learn that I am not his mother. I am his child, and at the end of the day, it's inappropriate for him to come to me and look for emotional security whenever he's going through shit, especially since 9 out of the 10 times he puts himself in that situation. The fact that I have come across so many women who have pretty much the same experience as I do with my mother is astonishing, and the fact that no one speaks about it is astonishing. And I'm talking about, I've come across an Indian woman around my age, same thing, she's gone through it. Latina, like South American, Central American, Caribbean, who have gone through the same thing that I have, but nobody speaks about it. It surprised me, but it helped me heal, because it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm not the only one. Thank goodness. As fucked up as that sounds, but it's just nice to know that there are other women out there who are going through this, and I feel as though it really is something we should talk about. There are also men, my brother, I mean, I don't know their relationship. She looks for him more than, I mean, she don't even look for me really, but she, to this day, she don't be looking for me, but I'm pretty sure she speaks to my brother more than she speaks to me, put it like that. So I know there are men who go through abandonment with their mother, whether they want to admit it or not, especially when it comes to mothers who have dealt with addiction. And a lot of the time, when you haven't worked through it and healed it, you're going to think that the trauma is just normal. Or like that's what really is normal? That's subjective. But you're going to think it's healthy, when really it's not. It's not healthy at all. I have notes, that's why I'm looking down. My first advice would be, healing is not linear. This can be a 20-year healing experience. You may never truly get over it, and that is okay. However, what helped me heal was to take myself out of the equation, which sounds crazy, but it really does help if you just look at the situation for what it is. Like, okay, my mother doesn't really care about me. She doesn't look for me. She never really did. How has this affected my life? And with my dating, with my friendships, with my coworkers, with my emotional health, with my interpersonal relationships with just, random people. And how can I separate what I have gone through because of the situation with me as a spirit in a human experience, or going through a human experience? Because at the end of the day, the trauma that you've experienced because of your mother is not your fault. 9 out of 10 times it has to do with the trauma that they experienced, and it's kind of like they think it's normal if they haven't healed from it, if they haven't gone to therapy. If, like, my mother's Dominican. Dominicans don't really believe in therapy. I remember when I told her I was going to therapy and that I was going to go on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. Her first reaction was like, for what? You don't need it. My dad was like, good for you, go to therapy. Which is rare, because also a lot of Black Americans, things are changing now, but a lot of Black Americans don't believe in therapy. They think that it's all a hoax, when it's like, no, therapy saved my life. It taught me how to cope with my feelings and how to heal from experiences, and it allowed me to have a space to speak to someone who does not judge me, which is rare. A lot of people do not have that. And for this, I want to say, if you are financially secure enough, or if your insurance allows, go to therapy. Talk it out. Because you are not the issue. I promise you, you're not the problem. You're not the issue. You have to remove yourself. You have to try to learn to remove yourself from the situation and understand that we are all human. We all make mistakes. Believe it or not, parents do what they think is best for their child. It's just because that's what they know, and that's what they think is healthy. Now, my mother, she's one class away. She's never going to go back to college. She is 30 credits shy from having a bachelor's degree in forensic psychology. She has an associate's degree in social science under the sect of psychology. Despite all of this training and knowledge in psychology, she still has treated me the way that she treats me. But at the end of the day, I've forgiven her years ago. I don't hold anything against her. I actually hope and pray that she finds the healing that she needs, because I'm an awesome person and she missed out on getting to know me. And who knows, maybe one day that relationship can be mended. I'm not looking for it, but I am open to it. I have spent just about my whole damn life chasing her love and affection, calling my dad on the phone, bawling in tears, because I've always felt unworthy of her love or undeserving, only to find out that, bro, like, maybe this is because this is what she's experienced and this is what she knows. Or maybe it's because of the fact that she didn't want me. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I've learned to remove myself from that situation and look at it for what it is. This isn't easy to do. Trust me, it's not. I know it's not. Try to do your research on how your mother was raised, and I promise you it'll make sense as to why she's treated you the way that she treats you. It's also important to look at the cycles in your life. When I was getting into relationships, I was dating people who weren't really emotionally open. So I felt as though it was my job to open them up. And I felt as though I had to do all that I can to make sure that they were satisfied emotionally, physically, mentally, so that they can eventually show me an inch, an ounce of the love and affection that I showed them. Eventually, through my healing process, in the third year, I noticed I was coming across and dating men and women who were too emotionally involved to the point where it scared me. And I was like, whoa, you're doing too much. You need to relax. And I closed myself off when they were doing too much, because now that I've healed from the trauma with my mother, I'm dating people like my father that are way too needy. So noticing the cycles within your dating life, even like with my friends, I've felt the need to always try to just be there for them emotionally, whether or not I was going through my own shit and they were reciprocating that energy or not, because I wanted to feel wanted. Learn your boundaries, sit down with yourself, and really evaluate your relationships. For example, if there's a certain language that you don't like for someone to use with you or around you. For example, if you don't like men calling women females, I hate that. I think that's like one of the most disrespectful things. You're dating someone who does that, correct them. Say, I would appreciate it if you didn't use that language around me. If they have a problem with it, okay, you can leave. Like, you don't have to stay with this person. Now, if they loved you and respected you, they would not use that type of language around you after you've voiced that you don't appreciate that type of language. Or, for example, if every time you express yourself, you've noticed that your friend kind of brushes it off and you don't like that, voice it. First of all, take into consideration that you don't like that. Okay, that is a boundary for you. Okay, I don't like being dismissed when I am communicating my feelings. And voice that to your friend, like, hey, listen, you don't have to voice it right away, but be like, I noticed the other day when I was expressing to you how I felt about the way they're treating me at work, you kind of brushed it off. I didn't appreciate that. If you don't feel comfortable with me voicing how I feel, or if you were feeling If you weren't in the mood to listen to anybody else's problems, you should have told me that. But to me, I didn't like how that felt, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't brush off my feelings when I'm having heart-to-heart conversations with you. You know what I mean? Learning your boundaries, learning to say no. If someone consistently asks you for money and you don't like that, tell them. But learning what your boundaries are and learning how to voice them will help heal you. I'm telling you, me learning how to say no to my dad was like the best thing for myself. That was like literally my biggest problem, was learning how to say no. And I practiced with my father. It was easy. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was the easiest way for me to learn how to voice my boundaries. I hope that this helped somebody out there. Honestly, it was just something that was bothering me, especially because of this we just had a new moon in Gemini, and it brought up a lot of trauma. Like, I even had a dream with my mother where I was yelling at her in the top of my lungs, and she was just laughing, and I was just telling her everything that I felt about her. And she was just there laughing, eating. It was like a barbecue party or something. Oh my goodness, that ruined my whole day. That, and she recently just contacted me. I haven't heard from her in 2 years. I haven't heard from her. So it was a lot of feelings were brought up that I thought that I had gotten over, but apparently I didn't, which was interesting. But I did notice that I was able to actually voice to her how I felt, which I've never done in the past. So look at me healing or whatever. This is part of my healing process too. It's like really irking me how in society nobody talks about mother issues. And I mean, they talk about it when it comes to men, but not so much when it comes to women. A lot of people like to talk about men having mommy issues, or men having daddy issues, or women having daddy issues, but not so much women having mommy issues. Comment down below what you guys think. Hope you have a good day. See you in the next one.